When Bilbo put on the ring at the party, did he see the eye? Because Gandalf saw it the first time, like he got close to it, and Frodo saw it the very first time he put it on. But Bilbo, it's not there.
Before the Rings of Power, there were the Silmarils. Before Sauron, there was his master Morgoth. Before Aragorn and Arwen, there was Beren and Luthien. Join us as we explore Tolkien and all the ages of Middle-earth with your hosts from theonering.com, Jonathan Watson and Michael Grumbine.
It's another big week here at Exploring Tolkien, and also at my house because the local pool is opening this week. So that's really huge around all these kids. They actually want to go today, and I'm like, it's 68 degrees and the pool's a little cold, so I don't know if you want to do that. We are going into two more changes happening in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films, and I know some of you have been clamoring for us to get back to the books, and we will in the next week or so. I think next week we will have actually another interview that's going out, and then after that we might have a special episode with a former host if we can swing it. We're going to try, and then we'll get into actually what's in War of the Rohirrim with the appendix section called The House of Earl in the Annals of the Kings and Rulers. It's page 1063 in my copy of The Lord of the Rings because I carry the whole copy together. I don't want to split this thing apart.
You carry the Lord of the Rings Bible, huh?
That's right. Well, that's yeah. And then I have the Talmud, all the histories of Middle Earth too. Yeah. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. It was also a big week. We saw the Rings of Power trailer.
That was huge. It was so memorable. I just wanted it to be, I wanted to wake up and realize it was a nightmare, but no, it turns out.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're not saving it, but we had some fun with it. We put out a video on our YouTube channel, so you guys go there, check that out. You can just get there right away by going to theonering.com/YouTube, and you'd get that.
So are you going to tell them what we're actually going to do as far as the book goes? Because you said we want to get back to the books, and you proceeded to list off 4 weeks worth of stuff that is not the books.
Well, when is the books? What do you mean? The House of Earl is the books. It's in the appendix to Return of the King. After that, right. We're looking at getting back. We're actually going to be rereading The Hobbit, which had a poor film adaptation and has left a sour taste in my mouth ever since then. And so getting back to that, it will take us shorter to actually read the books than it would be to watch the films. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it because it's actually quite rare, even on the internet, to find a lot of the main Tolkien channels doing reviews of the book The Hobbit. Yeah. Everyone likes the later books that he put out,
the deep lore,
the deep lore, right? Which is fun. We love it too, but also can't forget the OG entrance into Middle Earth, right?
That's right. And we're gonna maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, but we will get into our members' questions, which you can get in our extended podcast by becoming a member at theonering.com/member or theonering.com/Patreon. You can go directly to our Patreon channel. It's $4 a month. The first month is free, or the first week is free on Patreon. And or you can become a sponsor for a little bit more than that, like Harrison, Adam, Lynn, and Rich, and join us in the Discord chat that we've got going on, where only the strongest ask the hardest questions and the strongest survive. But yeah, join us there, theonering.com/member, and get all that. It's only $4 a month. You can test it out for a month too. And this week we're also going to take a look at, in addition to some questions from some members, we're going to look at what happens to Celebrimbor in the Rings of Power, because I think there's a big hint at the end of it, and I may do more on what Tolkien said what happens to Celebrimbor and what looks like it's going to happen in the Rings of Power to Celebrimbor. So again, we're not expecting those to meet happily in the middle in this, in how things are going to happen here. But we'll take a look at it. So
it would be actually kind of funny at the end of the Rings of Power, and by funny I mean torturous. But it would be interesting and interestingly torturous to go through and see once the Rings of Power season, or at the end of each season maybe. Did they get anything right? Pick out the list of can you count on one hand or two the amount of things that actually match what Tolkien said? Because I'm gonna go on a limb here and say you're gonna find surprisingly little that matches Rings of Power to Tolkien. And by the way, using people's names doesn't count. Just because you say, oh, there's Elendil, yeah, but if he's not the same Elendil, then it doesn't count.
Right. Or, oh, there's Anatar, but he appears at the wrong time and he's not acting the same way that they would have said.
There are so many funny memes about wigs. Wigs have made a comeback in the memes with
one wig to rule them all,
that's right.
2 ears to bind them. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. His wig mastery in that one shot is pretty impressive in the Rings of Power trailer. All right, let's get into these 2 changes that we have. Oh, hey, one more thing. Hey guys, throw us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever. We'd appreciate that. More people that listen, the more people that review, the more people listen, and the more interaction we get. And we want interaction because it's a lot of fun. We enjoy all the feedback that we get. So yeah, take a second, do that. And if you, I'll try and respond. Can you respond on Apple Podcasts? I haven't done this in a while. I've got a day job.
I don't know.
All right. Anyway, so not that it was a rhetorical question, Michael. You don't have to. I'm not looking for it. I know you wouldn't know that answer.
Everything is specific
these things.
to me. There are no rhetorical questions. Everything. I'm Drax the Destroyer. Everything is literal.
Perfect. All right, we're going to jump into our very first change. This is change number 37, and we're calling it Prancing Pony Pivots.
Gandalf the Grey, can you tell him we've arrived?
Oh, yes, I remember. A big grey beard, pointy hat. Not seen him for 6 months.
This, my friend, is a pint. It comes in pints.
Oh.
I can get you one. He's over there. Frodo Baggins.
You draw far too much attention to yourself, Mr. Underhill.
What do you want?
A little more caution from you. That is no trinket you carry.
Let it go! I'll have you, Lord Shanks!
Okay, so I think the biggest change that we find that everybody thinks about is how Frodo disappears. In the book, he sings a long song about the man in the moon and the spoon and the cow and everything. And in here, he's going to stop Pippin from talking about him, and he slips and falls, and the ring flies up in the air because he's been playing with it in his hand, and it slides onto his finger, and then he disappears. And then on top of that, instead of crawling away into a corner and then taking the ring off, as he does in the books, he crawls into the corner. Oh, and he says in the books, "I'm here. I've been here the whole time. Oh, I just crawled away under the table. I was embarrassed when I fell." Aragorn yanks him and drags him upstairs, and it kind of shifts Aragorn's character from being more of a sly, like a mysterious character, because he just appears in their parlor when they go upstairs at one point, rather than being dragged upstairs and forcibly speaking with Frodo. So those are the sort of the big high level changes. We of course have the Barliman Butterbur changes too. Like he doesn't get a name. Number one, I don't think they ever call him Barliman anywhere in the films. And what a great man for somebody who has beer, Barley Man. And then also, I think an interesting one is that I didn't really put this in here in the clip, is that Frodo sees the eye in the movie, and he doesn't. Right, there is no eye like that in the Fellowship of the Ring at this point. There's nothing that says like, oh, I see a big red flaming cat eye coming at me because I put the ring on. It's very brief. It's like 2 sentences, I want to say, in the book where where the ring comes onto his finger, and then he said, Frodo felt a fool, not knowing what else to do. He crawled away under the tables to the dark corner by Strider, who sat unmoved, giving no sign of his thoughts. Frodo leaned back against the wall and took off the ring. So we don't really get that hint. That's where, again, in my dislike of the Fellowship of the Ring when it first came out, the look of the world when he put the ring on, I always was like, oh, well, I don't remember this being how Tolkien said that this happened when he put the ring on. It was a windy, dastardly looking flip side, underground, upside down. And so that when he put that on there, I was like, whoa, that's weird. And sort of a lot of startling, right? I was startled at a lot of his choices once I saw the films, and that was one of them right there.
Right. And I think the changes in the movie kind of go along with, as you say, they kind of, they have Barliman Butterbur technically, as we see here, but they don't really have Barliman Butterbur. In the books, we get to know Barliman, and he's a great character. He's this blustery, overworked innkeeper that he's flustered, and he's trying to remember a message from Gandalf, which, he is here. He's like, yeah, I kind of remember Gandalf, tall, pointy hat and long gray beard. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not Barliman in the book is actually scared of Gandalf because Gandalf has warned him. He has a letter to give him. So the letter is cut entirely out. The letter is for Frodo. And the letter is about both what Gandalf's message is for Frodo and about Aragorn, because Gandalf tells Frodo to expect Aragorn. And so we're going to get more into that. But let me focus for a second on the whole tone of Breetown here.
Mm-hmm.
It's dark. So everything here is dark. Some of the scenes that you from the movie that you didn't include here include like the muttering of the men and the like scowling humans, and it's very, very dark. Like the whole, even the inn itself. You know, they have the quippy line about it comes in pints, which by the way, I like that line. I think it was a good.
I included it because it was a good change. I thought.
Yeah, that part I liked. Although Mary wasn't there in the books.
That's right.
So when they first meet Barliman in the books, he takes them to their room. Well, he says something and then he takes them to their room. He says a bunch of things. But one of the things he says is, we're really busy and there's dwarves from the east and men from the south. And, he says, quote, if you weren't hobbits, I doubt we could house you, but we've got a room or two in the north wing that was made specially for hobbits when this place was built. On the ground floor, as they usually prefer, round windows and all as they like it. I hope you'll be comfortable. You'll be wanting supper, I don't doubt. As soon as may be. This way now. And then it explains they enter the room and they give them a description of the parlor that they enter, which is, connected to their bedrooms down a passageway, but it's just a parlor room. And he said, it says, he seemed capable, this is Barliman, of an endless stream of talk, however busy he might be. They found themselves in a small and cozy room. There was a bit of bright fire burning on the hearth, and in front of it were some low and comfortable chairs. There was a round table, already spread with a white cloth, and on it was a large handbell. But Nob, the hobbit servant, came bustling in long before they thought of ringing. He brought candles and a tray full of plates, and then he proceeds to bring them a whole meal, and they eat and they drink, and they're satisfied, and they're just amongst themselves. And then the three of the four, everyone except Mary, decides to go into the common room. So all this is cut out, and what ends up being cut out essentially is cheer. This place is, Tom Bombadil recommends the prancing pony to them, Barliman to them, as a good man, and Gandalf does too. So the movie, aside from this one shot up with the beer, the movie itself misses out entirely on the cheer and the sort of haven that Barliman's the prancing pony is, and Barliman's character himself. Although he's flustered and ultimately he forgets what he was supposed to do with them, mostly because Frodo didn't use his correct name; he used Underhill instead of Baggins. Then we cut that out. So again, similar to other changes made by the movies, it's kind of taking out a bunch of stuff that adds to the richness and character. And in this case, Breetown represents kind of a halfway point. It's not the full cheer and comfort and solace and haven that Hobbiton may be. But it's kind of halfway. It's got some Hobbit elements. It's got and friendly elements like Butterbur, and it's got some elements of the world of men, and of course the Black Riders. And speaking of, we'll get more into the other changes that were made. But Aragorn himself is much more sort of companionable. He doesn't drag Frodo upstairs. The song that Frodo sings that you mentioned, which is a great song, it's a 12 stanza poem because of course it's Tolkien, so you can't get through a chapter without someone singing a song somewhere. And this song I especially love. My kids love it too when I read it to them, because as with much else in Tolkien, he did this intellectual exercise where there's this old nursery rhyme about the cat and the fiddle. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and fiddle, cow jumped over the moon, little dog laughed to see each sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Well, he imagined what would this poem have been like originally. And so he has the hobbits as the originators of this poem. And there's this great poem that ends with a couple of stanzas where they're rolling the man in the moon, because the man in the moon came down and got drunk essentially and had to roll him back up.
See, it's not a kid's book. Let's remember, the moon gets drunk. This is nothing for children that they should be enjoying on their own.
Exactly, and all the creatures are trying to get him back up at the moon, and one of them's playing the fiddle. And then there's this stanza: with a ping and a pong, the fiddle strings broke. The cow jumped over the moon, and the little log laughed to see such fun. And the Saturday dish went off at a run with a silver Sunday spoon. The round moon rolled behind the hill, and as the sun raised up her head, she hardly believed her fiery eyes, for though it was day, to her surprise, they all went back to bed. So that's the end of the song, and at that point, Frodo decides to dance and have another drink, and then eventually ends up with the mishap where he disappears with the ring. And in fact, he starts singing this song in the first place because he's trying to get Pippin to stop telling the story. Because Pippin, instead of just saying, "Oh yeah, Mr. Baggins is over there," like he does in the movie, Pippin is actually telling the story of Bilbo's disappearance, and so Frodo doesn't want the name Baggins to come up at all, which in the movie it just happens. It just comes up. And so anyway, there's just a lot lost. I understand I think why they did it. They were cutting, first of all, and second of all, to save time. And second of all, I think Jackson was going for a darker tone. So Strider is darker. Barliman is more remote. He isn't friendly. The Prancing Pony Inn is a dark and sort of scary place with lots of growling men. And it's just a different feel than the Prancing Pony in the books.
Yeah, it's the Prancing Pony in the books. Like you said, I want to read a couple quotes from the very beginning because he spends about a page and a half talking about Bree and its importance. I think he liked the idea of Bree, of the meeting, like you said, the middle ground between the hobbits and the big folk and the little folk, as they put it.
World of men and the world of the Shire.
Right. And so here's what he wrote. The men of Bree were brown-haired, broad, and rather short. Cheerful and independent, they belonged to nobody but themselves, but they were more friendly and familiar with hobbits, dwarves, elves, and other inhabitants of the world about them than was or is usual with big people. And then a little bit later, a couple paragraphs down, he writes, the big folk and the little folk, as they called one another, were on friendly terms, minding their own affairs in their own ways, but both rightly regarding themselves as necessary parts of the Bree folk. Nowhere else in the world was this peculiar but excellent arrangement to be found. And so he sets up Bree as a welcoming place, not as a rainy, dark and stormy, dangerous spot for the hobbits. And when you think like Gandalf told him to go, like this is what, like let's it just doesn't match up for me. And then you have the burping Peter Jackson, which I did not include because he's in the, is that an extended edition only? I don't remember. Do you remember that?
I think it's an extended edition only.
Yeah, and you don't see any hobbits at all in Bree. None. They're just, other than the 4 hobbits, right? And so normally there were other hobbits here, like laughing and dancing or laughing and cheering Frodo on, and it's lost a lot, like you said, a lot of its color because it's now just a dangerous spot. When really the danger is, who's this mysterious guy watching them, like from the distance? And it starts off with how when they enter in, they see a shadow essentially slide off into the city after he's been watching them. I'm trying to find that.
Well, they don't see it.
Right. As soon,
yeah, a shadow climbs the wall.
A dark figure climbed quickly and over the gate and melted in the shadows of the village street. And so, like, and I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be Aragorn right there. And so you get this mysteriousness for him that I think is also lost. He's more just a dangerous person right when you see him, and it shifts pretty quickly, obviously. But that coloring of the character is lost.
Yep. I just think everything gets darker, and Jackson wants us to sort of get the shock value of the hobbits in the world of the dark and dangerous world of men, and that's not actually what Bree is like. There's a couple men like Harry Goatleaf, the gatekeeper, who's suspicious, and there's some of the men from the south who are guests at the inn. But everybody else, like you said, there's hobbits there. There's a company of dwarves there. Barliman Butterbur and Nob and Bob, the servants, are downright friendly. It's actually a cheerful and welcoming place for the most part. And then, of course, there's the conflict with the Black Riders who are edging around town. But that doesn't affect the Prancing Pony. The Prancing Pony is a cheerful place.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into what we think about these changes. So the first question, is it lore friendly? Do we think that, if I can get, there we go, get to the next shot there, that these changes where they pivoted all these small things in the Prancing Pony, is it enough to make it unfriendly to the lore?
So when you think about the things, what did they change? They removed Barliman Butterbur's familiarity. They removed his friendship. They removed the parlor and the cheerfulness and the Hobbit. The respite and the comfort of the Hobbit comforts that made the Prancing Pony really a true resting place for the hobbits. They removed that. They removed all the friendly hobbits that are in the common room. They removed the dwarves. They removed they removed the song, which is actually
Mhm.
quite this just silly and cheerful Hobbit song, which gives its own character and flavor. I actually think what he did. I don't hold this to be terribly serious. But it is contrary to the lore. So, is it lore friendly? In my mind, it is actually not. Like the dark and dangerous prancing pony is not lore friendly, including a dark and dangerous Aragorn meeting
Yeah,
his.
I agree. And what happens when he puts on the ring, I've always found that not lore
Oh,
friendly.
that's true. Yep.
That too. This is the first time that we really see, other than when Gandalf reaches down for it in Bag End, and he almost touches it, and he sees the eye for a split second. Right. That whole
Right.
thing about the eye being all watching when he put the ring on, I found
Yep. So, and
disappointing.
I agree with you entirely. The eye gives it even a darker tone. The prancing pony an even darker tone. I actually don't have as much of a problem with the eye itself because I understand that what Jackson has to find some way to get across the terrible danger of the ring visually in a medium that doesn't lend itself to understanding the nuances of a book. So I'm more sympathetic towards Jackson with regard to the eye. So maybe you and I differ on that.
Yeah,
But as far as the dark tone goes and how Prancing Pony is presented, I think it's actually presented in the wrong light.
yeah, that I agree with that too. So no, for me as well, it is not lore friendly. All right, next question: does the change make for better cinema? Does the change make for better cinema? In this brief amount, I'd probably have to say yes. If you tried to make it into a long form TV show, you could have a whole section about Bree and inform us of the mysteriousness of Strider in a less hit you over the head kind of way. But for here, I think you had to move right away into who Strider was and the dangers of the ring and things like that. It's otherwise you are.
Yep.
Um,
I love Barliman Butterbur. I love his character. He's just this in Gandalf's comments later on about Butterbur. It's just very humanizing and wonderful character. But in a way, he's kind of he's like a lesser form of Tom Bombadil in the sense that if they had spent time going into and developing his character, it wouldn't have worked as a movie. So from a cinematic perspective, yes, it does in fact make for better cinema, sadly. But it's just another reason why the books are better because you have the time. Or, as you and I have said many times, they should have turned it into a TV show instead of a movie.
yeah, yeah, and they didn't have those kinds of TV shows back then. There was no
That's
streaming to
true.
actually
That's
do it,
true.
so it
What was
wasn't
it?
possible.
24 was one of the first ones that was along those
Yeah,
lines.
that's true. And that was soon after that or right around the same time. Right
Right.
around the same time. All right, next question, last question. How much do you like the change? How much do you like the change? I find it hard to like a lot of changes in this movie. And so I still feel like the change for the ring that like I really don't like it. It makes it so for instance, when I saw this in the movie theater, my first thought was, wait, so the whole time Bilbo has it? Like it's also this weird other underworld and he's been using it the whole time, and I guess maybe the eye wasn't there yet because it wasn't looking for it in the upside down of Middle Earth. But I had to reconcile that in my head, like find reasons why Bilbo would have been totally fine putting it on more often than Frodo is right now, where the eye is already there. And so if, for instance, when Bilbo put on the ring at the party, did he see the eye? Because Gandalf saw it the first time, like he got close to it, and Frodo saw it the very first time he put it on. But Bilbo, it's not there, and so I like that disconnect. That ruined that whole scene for me. So that ruins a large part of it. I miss Butterbur at least giving us his name. Come on, can we at least have his name in the movie? And I think we'll get more into that in the next one because I like Butterbur in that in the Strider chapter more. So how much do I like the change? Because of the eye, and it's the first time we see the eye, it's low. It's like, I'm gonna say 1.9. I don't like what they did here. That sort of colors it a lot. Now there's some other changes I'm more fine with, getting rid of the story that Pippin's telling or shifting that story, and even the song I'm okay with excising it, but that part with the eye and the ring and how that works in here, and making Bree dangerous rather than a place where the races are coming together. I don't know. This is not a good idea. The friendly Mos Eisley of Middle Earth. Uh, that's that's where I'm skewing towards not liking this one.
I'm with you that I don't like it. It's not that it's not a mortal sin in my mind. It's just another small stroke where the changes made are against the spirit of the Lord of the Rings. I understand the reasons why they were done. It doesn't offend me that much that they made it darker, because I understand their reasons. So for me, it's below the midpoint of 3.0, but it's not much. So for me, it's about a 2.6, because it just doesn't offend. It doesn't offend that much. We miss out on some things that I like, but it doesn't offend much. So
things should offend you more, Michael. You're becoming.
Is that right? Okay.
Oh yeah.
I prefer to be happy. So
Oh, being happy doesn't mean you're not offended. It means you're happily offended.
I'm happy to be offended.
I'm happy to be offended every once in a while.
Taking offense gives me joy. Many people might think that about us, having watched our comments on the Rings of Power.
Look, but I was going to say my offense at this is being true to who I am. And so if I wasn't true to who I was, I'd be even more sad. So there you go. That's why this makes me happy being offended.
That's the difference between us. I identify as a happier person than you do.
Well, I'm happy. I'm happy. All right, cool. Well, that was Prancing Pony Pivots. We are going to go into our last change for probably quite a while. We'll pivot back to these changes, but we are going to jump into our final change, which is Aragorn Abbreviated.
Men, great kings of men.
And that's pretty much the whole scene with Aragorn. There's an entire chapter in the Fellowship of the Ring titled Strider.
With not only an entire chapter, but it has, in my opinion, the second most important poem in the book.
Yeah, good point. And we learn so much, not just about the Nazgul, but about Strider, about Butterbur, about Gandalf, that is completely removed from the films. And it disappointed me that this was what we got, their interaction with Strider essentially after when they come in, well, I'll have you, Longshanks. There's almost nothing there. And then they're immediately like sleeping in this area. Oh, and of course in the Strider scene, well, all right, after this, we missed the fear, fire, foes, awake in Crick Hollow, where Fatty Bulger,
poor Fatty Bulger, got dissed again.
So out of this scene, I mean, there's a lot to be missed, and I don't think we can go through all of it. I think the biggest thing, one, you mentioned the poem. Two is the whole letter. That to me, those to me are, and I guess that's part of the letter, but everything that's in the letter, and it determines, it lets you know what's happened to Gandalf, because up through here in the books, you've been wondering what's been going on, and clearly in the movies, they do it in the middle of the story. They don't tell you later in Rivendell exactly what happens, or have a letter to tell you that Gandalf should have been here but really wasn't. And then also we have the whole scene with Merry and the Nazgul missing, or the recollection that happens in the book of Merry and the Nazgul.
Yeah, I break it down into basically four big differences, just to cover what we've been sort of talking around it, but just to real quickly do a summary of the changes. What are in fact, if someone's going to ask us, what are the differences between the book and the movie? They boil down to four things in my mind. One is Merry has a whole escapade where he's wandering around Braytown, and he runs into a Nazgul, passes out from the Black Breath, and is found by Nob, the Hobbit servant, and taken back to the Prancing Pony. So that's one. We miss the interaction between Strider and conversation between Strider and the Hobbits in the parlor. And that includes Barliman Butterbur coming in and him giving his opinion on Strider, and then Strider showing up and Barliman basically leaving. It includes the letter from Gandalf. Gandalf has left a letter, and he talks about Aragorn. And that letter has the second most famous poem after the ring inscription itself, which is, "All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither, deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the dark shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken, the crownless again shall be king."
And there's this, right? Wait. There's this.
Yes.
Yeah.
An old subsection from our podcast. is taken exactly from that passage, and it's a poem about Aragorn himself in a variety of aspects, and Aragorn confirms it by reciting part of the poem without seeing the words on the page, and so Frodo knows that he is indeed Aragorn, and then he talks a lot about, he gives them a lot of backstory, so there's a lot of that, and then so there's the loss of Merry's story, the loss of Barliman Butterbur's interactions, the loss of Aragorn, and the poem about him, and then finally there's the actual difference of, they weren't in a different building looking through a window at their old rooms. They were actually in the down the hall from their bedrooms, which did get trashed. Their bedrooms did get trashed by the Nazgul, though they don't see it. They just barricade themselves in the parlor for the night, and with Aragorn guarding them, and the hobbits sleep in the parlor. So, and that's the difference.
Well, and also we find out that Barliman heard nothing. He wasn't cowering on the side next to his kitchen counter there, seeing the Nazgul come in. He's like, I didn't hear anything. It was silent the whole night, right? And so there wasn't the shrieking, screaming that they heard across the street either. But again, we're leaning into that whole idea of Bree being a dangerous, dastardly place, dark. Yeah. And so
Bree in the movies is basically under the thrall of evil. Bree in the books is not. The evil does have an impact. So, for example, the Nazgul, or the men working with the Nazgul, Bill Ferny and Harry Goatleaf, etc., do steal everyone's horses that's at the inn, but that's everyone, including the dwarves and the men from the south, etc. So evil has an effect, and they do break in the Nazgul do break in the window and trash their rooms. Although it's not really clear that it's the Nazgul that does that. Actually,
yeah, that's actually a good point.
It might be the men under the thrall of the Nazgul that break in through the window and trash the Hobbit chamber bedrooms, but anyway, because we just don't see. But that part I don't have a problem with. It could have been the Nazgul, but definitely, like you say, there's no cowering Barliman and no Bree under the thrall of the Nazgul. That's not accurate.
Yeah, and let me read to you the part that the only thing that it says about what happened to the rooms is this: as soon as Strider had roused them all, he led the way to their bedrooms. When they saw them, they were glad that they had taken his advice. The windows had been forced open. You would think if they were Nazgul, right, the windows wouldn't have necessarily been forced open. Maybe.
Well, maybe, but they do break the door at Crick Hollow, so they do.
That's a good point. That's true. Okay, all right. The windows had been forced open and were swinging, and the curtains were flapping. The beds were tossed about, and the bolsters slashed and flung upon the floor. The brown mat was torn to pieces. So it was a violent act, but you're right. It's never clear whether it's the Nazgul or, as we learn in the Strider chapter, that he explicitly mentions Bill Ferny as the guy to watch out for. It could have been him as well. So they take some liberties with the idea that we're going to show you exactly who it is, even though Tolkien never said so.
Right. And there's at least one man from the south, one Southron, who looks like a little orcish, and he's probably in the thrall of them. Probably others as well. Definitely, the gatekeeper was dominated by the Nazgul, because he's mentioned as being white, having a conversation with them and coming away white and shaking, and so he's so anyway, it could have been the servants, the human servants of the Nazgul, or thralls of the Nazgul, if you want to call them that. But anyway, it's never clear. Lots of changes, lots of little changes, but I think the biggest change is the whole character of Strider and his interaction with the hobbits, and the letter from Gandalf and the poem about Strider, about Aragorn.
I love this line about, like, that one. Gandalf puts in a bunch of PSs in his letter, which is what I did when I was like in junior high, when I'd send letters to people back in the day.
Yeah, me too.
I forgot about this. And his last one is, I hope Butterbur sends this promptly. A worthy man, but his memory is like a lumber room. Thing wanted, always buried. A lumber room is like an attic or a storage location where you'd throw a bunch of stuff in there. If he forgets, I shall roast him. Like, I love that Gandalf isn't. He's just not. He doesn't mince his words. Like, when he's angry, he's just going to be angry. I shall roast him. And I don't think he means to burn him up, but his anger will be piqued to a degree that Butterbur will not like. And I miss that line. That's sort of it's even indicative of Gandalf's character, is that he left this letter and that he didn't leave them hanging, and that he trusted Butterbur. Butterbur broke his trust. And I miss, that's, to me, that's the biggest part that's missing, is that flavor of the relationships that you get even just from the letter. So
Yep, and Butterbur even says explicitly that Gandalf is a quote good friend of his. So
yeah,
so that whole thing about like him not the Butterbur of the movie not knowing Gandalf or referring to him as just some sort of stranger is
yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
just
Yeah, he's not
avoid.
a stranger. Absolutely right. Yeah, he's like, oh, old man, long beard, pointy hat. Not seen him in 6 months. Right. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's not really Butterbur there.
That's not the Butterbur of the books.
Okay, so
But anyway, the biggest loss I still say is the "All that is gold does not glitter" poem, and Gandalf's letter itself.
Yeah, The whole letter is the lost part, in my opinion. That part of it informs so much of what happens and what's happened to Gandalf when you get to Rivendell eventually to find out what's happened. So, okay, so let's take a look at this here. Is it lore friendly? Is it lore friendly to remove that? I will start, and I will instantly say no. I don't think it is lore friendly to do what they did to remove that, because it does remove one. It removes. Well, it removed Crick Hollow. I think that whole scene I think is great. I think it's not lore friendly to know that the Nazgul were still searching and not even near Bree at the time. Two, removing the poem, and I believe Bilbo wrote that poem, right?
Mm-hmm.
We learn later in Rivendell. Removing that poem is like removing the ring poem from the ring. It's so important, and you remove some of Gandalf's wonderful character in here, his friendly fieriness, even
Right.
just through the letter, and I feel like that's lost. So to me, it changes things a little too much to make it lore friendly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little closer to the edge on this one because of these are in one sense minor things to take out, but in another sense, the last book of the trilogy is not called The Destruction of the Ring. It's called The Return of the King. And Aragorn's character and who he is as king. This is the first time we're introduced to him as king, and as a lost king, and a king who's going to become a king again someday. And his character as someone deeply noble, not just a friendly ranger that's going to help them as a friend of Gandalf's or something, but a mighty warrior and hero in his own right, and a man of great importance. And I agree with you. We lose out Barliman and Gandalf's friendship. We lose off on Gandalf's letter itself and all the personality that it conveys. And in the end, I don't even think it would have taken that much time in the movie to do the letter. They could have done it in 60 to 90 seconds. But anyway,
yeah, they could have added it. Okay, next question: does the change make for better cinema? Does the change make for better cinema? What do you think?
So this was a tough one for me because I'm balancing on this one. Like we said, yes, it made for better cinema last time because it saved so much time to not have, because they would have had to showed a lot of scenes of the hobbits entering the parlor, being taken in, their conversation with Barliman, their meals, then them going to the long room, and then the song. So that's why I landed on it makes for better cinema, because we're cutting out a lot of stuff. This change of Aragorn's character, I don't think it actually would have taken that much time. And so I'm going to say no on this. I don't think it makes for better cinema, because I think with a minor add, you could have added a lot of character. By the way, Jackson is very, very concerned with Aragorn's decision to return and be king. This could have been the springboard to introduce the idea of the crownless again being king. And Jackson's take would have been the reluctant king, right? The Aragorn not sure if he had what it took to become king. That he could have fit even his own take, which I don't agree with, but he could have even used the poem from Gandalf written by Bilbo, as you pointed out, to highlight this and introduce us to Aragorn as king, or as a potential king anyway. And he didn't. Yeah. So I think that this does not make for better cinema. I think much could have been gained from adding this keeping this character.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it would have taken a whole lot to add that in the scene, and to add, like you said, 30 to 30, 60, 90 seconds into a little bit more interaction. I think even having a little bit more with Barliman, and something jogs his memory that he does get the letter, just having it there instead of the choices that they made. This is one of those choices that they made when they wrote the script. And perhaps looking back, they're like, yeah, we probably could have, we probably didn't need to make that change right there, because it wasn't that much of it didn't have that much of an effect on the timeline of the entire movie, considering the movie's 3 hours long. So
exactly. I mean, how much would it have taken to just have Barliman remember the letter from Gandalf and give it and deliver it to Frodo, and then Frodo read a couple passages from it? Like, that just doesn't. And then Aragorn, so it just gives a new light to Aragorn, and it would have made more believable the Hobbit's quick, following of his instructions to stay out of their room, which ends up getting attacked. So anyway, I see it as a loss.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes it sense, like, at this point that he says, make for Rivendell. And in the films, it's Aragorn that says, we're going to make for Rivendell, or make for no, in the books he says make for Weathertop. I think in the movie he does say we're going to head for Rivendell. To the House of Elrond, who will have the answers to the problems, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, how much do you like the change? So here's the thing. It was what they did was effectively done. If I wouldn't have known about what was in the books. So I won't say like it was a poorly done change. I thought, the fear of the Nazgul is made more acute by the scene that he added. But I don't like that you lose so much about the letter, about Gandalf, about Strider's character, about the Rangers, about Butterbur. Like, there's so much that's lost. So I don't.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, because I don't think that you could have done the fear of the Nazgul, and as he did it, and still kept the letter from Gandalf, and still kept the poem about Aragorn, and still kept Aragorn's introduction as the crownless king.
Yeah. So how much? Well, it's less than halfway, but it's probably a little bit more than last time, I think, just because of the eye. The eye really messed me over when I saw that in the film. I'm going to go with a straight 2. 2.0, man.
I'm close. I'm 2.2 on this one. I like it even less than the previous change. Again, it's not a tragedy, but it's not great. So could have been so much richer.
People are going to think we hate these movies. Like, they really do. This is. I'm sorry. Every time I look at this, I'm like, wow, I gave it a 2 on a scale of 1 to 5. I gave it a 2, and just which is right for me, because it is where I was and it is where I am after reading the books. But man,
maybe we can do a recap of this in our next, or when we restart these changes again. But let me just agree with you here, but say it in a different way.
Okay.
For years, I was a project manager on capital construction in healthcare, and we had to do these surveys where we gave people 5-point scales for everything. And if you got less than 4, it was basically people saying that they didn't like you, because when it comes to human interaction, what we want is 5s, and then if you get a 4, there's like, yeah, I had a problem, but it's all okay. Anything less than a 4, you suck, is essentially the message from a public perception perspective. Or the service was deeply flawed. We're approaching this in a different way. You and I have been from the beginning really saying like 3.0 is midpoint on a 5-point scale. So if we're neutral about it, we're going to give it a 3. If we're in favor, we'll give it higher. If we're not in favor, we'll give it lower. So the way we're doing the 5-point scale is just different from the way people usually approach 5-point scales.
Yeah. If we're okay. I'm not. Don't need to expound on that. All right.
This is our world. We make the rules here.
That's right. Just along for the ride. Something we haven't done for a while, which I thought was appropriate this time when we went over Bree and all the changes in Bree, was to bring up one more time. And that's back in the day, 20-something years ago, when I went to Dragon Con in Atlanta. I met the guys from Glass Hammer, and we talked with them. And they have an album they did that at that time called the Middle Earth album, which is, if they were playing at the Prancing Pony in Bree, what would it have sounded like? And so the first half of the album, all the way like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are all these songs that are sort of pub songs for Middle Earth, and it's a lot of fun. And then the last 6 are not, except for No Crown for Balin. That's also like a pub song. But there are 5 other songs in here that are more along their lines of prog rock. So I recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's a Middle Earth album. Here it is. I'll throw the link in. It's on Bandcamp. I'll throw the link in the show notes below or in your podcast player. But
Nice.
yeah, give it a listen. And it did do an interview with Steve Babb from Glasshammer about a year and a half ago, where we talked about their latest album and his love for Middle Earth. They have a few other albums too, which if I were to go look at them here, let's see, if I go to more releases, we can look. They also have one called, there's Paralandra. Obviously, we know what that's about. There is, I believe, the Inconsolable Secret is, maybe that's part of it. But no, you get to Shadowlands. That's one. Oh, I don't see their other. They have one called something. Hold on. Something of the Dunedain. So if we go to glasshammer.com, we can check that. But in any case, they are very influenced by Lord of the Rings. So I would check out Glasshammer, particularly when you get to it. The Middle Earth album that was released 2001, June 15th,
Nice.
2001. Long time ago. All right, everybody. We're going to jump into our extended podcast, which you can get by becoming a member of theonering.com/member and get into Discord and ask questions there. We've got some questions and comments from Billiam, from Thomas, from AJ. And I'm going to take a look at Celebrimbor and the Rings of Power trailer too. We thought that would be interesting to sort of dive into that. So
Sure. Interesting. Super interesting.
Interesting is a very non-committal word.
It is. So off we go to do some interesting things. Goodbye, freeloaders.